I didn't expect my father to turn our relationship into something that needed a lawyer. The message came in while I was going through routine payments I'd seen so many times they barely registered anymore. Insurance, utilities, automatic transfers that had been running for years without interruption. His name popped up on my phone, and for a moment I assumed it was something normal. It wasn't. All communication must go through my lawyer. You'll receive the inheritance papers within 72 hours. I read it once. Then again, slower the second time. For a moment, I almost called him back just to ask what he meant. Then I stopped. There was no explanation. No warning. Just a statement, delivered like a final boundary I was expected to accept without question. My name is Rowan Whitaker. I'm 27. For the past few years, I had been quietly keeping most of my parents' financial life running, not officially, not in any way we ever discussed, but in the way things slowly become permanent when no one stops them. I stared at the message a little longer, then replied, "Understood." After that, I opened the accounts I managed and started making changes. Not out of emotion. It felt more like I was following instructions more carefully than he expected me to. It hadn't started as anything deliberate. Years earlier, my mother had a minor heart issue. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make everyday things harder. She missed a payment once, then again. So I stepped in. At first, it was just one account, then another, then a whole set of bills that needed organizing so nothing slipped through. I put them under my name because it was easier. Insurance, prescriptions, house maintenance, the kind of expenses that only matter when they're late. Somewhere along the way, temporary became permanent. My father never asked me to take over, but he never stopped it either. He used what was already there. 2 credit cards linked to my accounts became his default for daily spending, groceries, fuel, small purchases that didn't seem worth tracking one by one. It was easier for him. And I told myself I was just helping keep things stable while my mother recovered. He still owned the house. He still had investments. On paper, everything looked solid. He used to say he didn't like not knowing where money was going. But he never actually managed any of it. The day-to-day responsibility had already shifted away from him. And without anyone clearly deciding it, it had shifted to me. I told myself it was practical, that it made things easier, that it kept everything running. When I opened the accounts again after his message, I saw the full shape of it for the first time. And I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what I was doing, but because I understood exactly what would change once I did it. I called a lawyer that same afternoon. Not because I was overwhelmed, because I didn't trust my own read of what my father had just set in motion. Her name was Dana Keller. She handled estate and family matters. The first thing she asked after I explained everything wasn't how I felt. It was how everything had been structured before this, just existed on paper. I walked her through everything as clearly as I could, the house in Savannah, the investment accounts, the trust my parents had set up years ago. My name appeared in parts of it, though I had barely paid attention back then. It had always felt like something meant for later. Dana stayed quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He can propose changes, but that doesn't mean he can enforce them." For the first time since his message, something didn't feel absolute. "He's trying to amend the trust," she continued, her voice steady, clinical. "Most likely to shift control, not necessarily ownership. That's important." I leaned back, looking at the documents already open on my screen. "Can he remove me from it?" I asked. "Not unilaterally," she said. "Not if your mother's interest is tied into the same structure. And not if there are co-consent provisions, which there usually are." "So, what is he actually doing?" I asked. "He's creating pressure," she said. "He's setting a position and waiting for you to react before you verify whether it's even valid." It wasn't the first time he had used pressure. Just the first time he had done it in writing. I didn't respond right away. I read the trust again, slower this time, noticing details I had ignored before, not because they were hidden, but because I had never needed to understand them. The language wasn't vague. It was precise in a way that made assumptions dangerous. He had presented it like a decision already made. It wasn't. He was trying to move something that wasn't fully his to control, and he was relying on me not knowing that. After the call with Dana, I didn't reach out to him. There was nothing to clarify anymore. No reason to step outside a legal structure he had chosen for communication. If he wanted lawyers, then that's what he would get. I opened the accounts I managed and started with the simplest change. His name sat under mine as an authorized user on the first credit card, something I had added years ago, without thinking twice. It took less than a minute to remove him. I paused longer than I expected before moving on. Not because I doubted it, but because I understood exactly what would change. No warning. No confirmation beyond a small notification. Then the second card. Then the automated payments. Insurance. Utilities. Recurring expenses tied to the house. Everything that had been running quietly in the background stopped just as quietly. Halfway through, my hand hovered over the trackpad. Not uncertainty. Just awareness of scale. I finished it in one continuous sequence. Accounts separated. Transfers ended. Access removed. I didn't feel anger. It felt procedural, like I was aligning reality with the terms he had chosen. He defined it as a legal boundary. I simply made everything match. The first sign didn't come from him. It came from my mother. She called late that morning, her voice carefully controlled in the way people use when they're trying to keep normality intact. There was a faint echo behind her. Tile floors, bright lights. "Rowan, your dad's card isn't working," she said. "We're at the pharmacy, and it keeps getting declined." I already knew which card she meant. "It's not going to work," I said. A pause. Then her voice shifted slightly. "What do you mean?" "I removed him yesterday." I said I removed him from both cards. She didn't respond right away. When she finally did, her voice was quieter. "Why would you do that now?" "He asked for everything to go through his lawyer," I said. "So I'm treating it that way." I could hear movement on her end, like she had turned away from him. "He didn't think you'd take it like that," she said. "He wrote it like that," I replied. That ended the conversation. She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. A few hours later, a notification came through. An insurance payment that had always processed automatically didn't go through. She called again that evening, this time without trying to soften anything. "The insurance didn't process," she said. "They said it needs to be handled today." I leaned back in my chair, staring at nothing. "Then he needs to handle it." "He doesn't know how," she said. There was strain in her voice now. Not panic yet, but close. I let the silence sit before answering. "He can figure it out, or he can have his lawyer handle it." The pause that followed was longer than the ones before it. "I don't think he expected this," she said quietly. Neither did I. By the end of the day, it was clear something had shifted. Nothing dramatic. Nothing visible to anyone outside it. Just small things, one after another, quietly failing in ways that revealed how much had been resting on a single point of support. The documents arrived on the third day, just as he said they would. A courier left them at the front desk, sealed, labeled, more formal than necessary. I took them upstairs and set them on the table before opening them. Not out of hesitation, but because I wanted to read them properly the first time. The language was structured, precise, familiar in a way I didn't expect. It wasn't new. It was built on top of what already existed. I called Dana and put her on speaker while I went through the first pages. "He's proposing amendments," she said after a moment, calm and steady. "But these aren't effective on their own." I turned the page slowly. "Why not?" "Because the assets are held in a joint trust," she said. "Any material change requires consent from all relevant parties, including you, depending on your designation." My name appeared again as I read, embedded across sections defining access, oversight, succession. Not symbolic. Structural. Functional. "He can't remove this without you," she continued. "Not without restructuring the entire trust. And that's not something a document like this can accomplish." I leaned back in my chair, the pages still open in front of me. For a moment, I remembered the day we signed the original agreement. My father had called it protection, a safeguard, something that would keep everything stable no matter what came later. At the time, I believed him. Now it didn't feel like protection. It felt like something he was trying to rewrite after realizing he never had full control of it. "He expected you to react before you reviewed it," Dana said. "That's usually the point of sending something like this with a deadline." I didn't answer. I read the first page again, slower this time, not searching for meaning, just confirming what was already there. Nothing in it forced me to agree. Nothing removed what was already in place. He had written it like a decision. It wasn't. It was a proposal that only worked if I accepted it. And he had already positioned himself as someone I wasn't supposed to respond to directly. I closed the folder and set it aside. Not because I was done with it, but because I didn't need to read it again to understand it. By the next morning, my mother stopped trying to sound calm. She called earlier than usual. I could hear it immediately. That tightness in her voice, like she had already spent hours trying to fix something she didn't understand. "Rowan," she said, "I can't get the prescription filled. They said the account isn't active." I closed the document I had been reviewing and leaned back in my chair. Which account did they reference? "I don't know," she said quickly. "Your dad handled it, but he keeps saying it's being sorted out and it isn't." A pause. Then, quieter. "He's been on the phone all morning. One call after another. Repeating the same explanation to people who don't have any reason to adjust things for him. Systems only work the way they're built to work. And I had stepped out of the part that made his version function. "I can send you the information directly," I said evenly. "You can set it up under your name." She hesitated. "I don't think I know how to do that." "You can," I said. "You just haven't needed to before." Another silence settled in, longer this time. "Your dad is saying you overreacted," she said finally. "That this didn't need to go this far." I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I could hear what she was really doing, trying to make sense of something that had shifted too fast to categorize. She wasn't defending him. She was trying to stabilize the situation in her own mind. "He made it legal," I said. I followed that. For a moment, I wondered if I had made this harder for her than it needed to be. "He didn't think you'd," she started, then stopped. "Follow through," I finished. She didn't confirm it. She didn't need to. "I just need to know what I'm supposed to do," she said after a moment. That was different. Not about him anymore. About her. That was the first shift I noticed. She wasn't asking me to fix it. She wasn't asking me to reverse anything. She just didn't understand why everything had stopped working, and no one had explained it in a way that made it feel stable. "I'll send you what you need," I said. "We'll take it one step at a time." I didn't mention him again. Neither did she. That evening, I went back through the documents. The first reading showed me what he couldn't do. The second showed me what he was trying to make me agree to anyway. Sections that once required shared authorization had been rewritten into sole control over disbursements. Oversight tied to my name had been reduced to notification instead of approval. Timelines that were fixed were now flexible, dependent on his discretion. He wasn't removing my name. He was rewriting what my name meant. I called Dana again and read the sections aloud. She didn't interrupt, but I could hear her typing, checking against the original structure. "He's not eliminating your position," she said when I finished. "He's converting it into something that doesn't restrict him." I looked at the page again. A paragraph rewritten just enough to shift control, without drawing attention to itself. "So if you sign this," she continued, "he gains authority he doesn't currently have. And you lose the ability to block decisions after they're made." It wasn't about inheritance. Not really. Nothing here transferred ownership in any meaningful new way. It was about access. About who decided, and who had to accept it afterward. He had framed it as inevitable, as already in motion, something I needed to react to quickly. But the more I read, the clearer it became. Nothing moved unless I agreed. He wasn't taking anything. He was asking me to sign it away. Quietly. In language that only looked reasonable if you didn't slow down long enough to see the structure underneath it. I saw his car before I saw him. Parked outside my building along the curb. Not freshly arrived, intentional. Waiting. I had just stepped out when he opened the door and walked toward me. No hesitation. No distance. None of the careful structure he had insisted on days earlier. "Rowan, we need to talk," he said. Controlled tone. Too fast to be calm. I didn't move closer. "You asked for everything to go through your lawyer." He exhaled like that detail was suddenly inconvenient. "That's not what this is about." "It is," I said. He stopped a few steps away, resetting his stance like he was trying to regain control of the frame. "You didn't have to shut everything down like that," he said. "Your mother is dealing with things she shouldn't have to." I let the silence sit. "You made it legal," I said. "I followed that." "That wasn't the point," he said, sharper now. "I was trying to get your attention. I didn't think you'd actually cut me off." That was the first honest thing he said. "You had it," I replied. A pause. This time, he didn't rush to fill it. "You're taking this too far," he said. "I'm taking it exactly where you said it." Something shifted in his expression, not anger. Not yet. Uncertainty. Like the outcome wasn't matching the version he had prepared for. "We can fix this without making it bigger," he said, softer now. "We're family." For a second, I almost let the moment soften. Then I looked at him, not searching for anything, just recognizing what had already changed. "Then you shouldn't have written it the way you did." He didn't respond. For the first time, he had nothing immediate to replace the silence with. And that silence wasn't neutral. It had weight. Not everything collapses when boundaries are set. Some things just stop pretending they were stable. The paperwork never became anything more than what it already was. The trust stayed intact. The structure remained unchanged. The revisions were never signed. It moved forward the way most things do when pressure is removed from them, quietly, without resistance, without spectacle. I didn't restore what I had taken away. The accounts stayed separate. The system stayed off. Responsibility returned to where it had always been, even if it took time for that to feel normal again. My mother adjusted slowly, learning what she needed directly. I helped when it made sense, without rebuilding what had replaced her involvement before. My father stopped framing it as temporary. He didn't apologize. But he also didn't push the same way again. The distance remained, just without urgency behind it. And for me, the change wasn't dramatic. It was clarity. My time stopped being organized around maintaining something I didn't actually control. My decisions stopped accounting for assumptions that weren't mine. Things didn't become perfect. They just became honest. This was never really about inheritance. It was about control that only worked as long as no one looked closely enough at it. And if there's anything I learned from it, it's this. Stepping back doesn't always break things. Sometimes it reveals what was already unstable. I didn't end anything that week. I just stopped holding something in place that was never meant to depend on me.